Welcome to another episode of Real Life Fiction. I am Matt James with Conundrum Publishing, international best-selling author of the Jack Riley Adventure series. And today I will be talking to author and graphic designer David Behrens. Hey Dave, how you doing? Thanks for coming on the show.
I am good, man. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Awesome. So for those that don't know who you are, give the viewer a little bit of a background into who David Behrens is.
Okay. So I have a day job. I'm a writer and also a tennis pro. And I've been doing that now for 24 years. So that's my career of choice. I enjoy doing it. So it's uh, it's it's been a really good choice for me. The writing came along a little later in my career. I did actually go to school. I went to college for English education, originally planning to be a teacher. Then somehow I got into tennis and it took off, and I just kind of went away from teaching. So, but I do have an English background, and I've always had writing in my life. I did not know about independent publishing until much later in my writing career. So I wrote a book in 1992, way before any of this happened with Kindle or Amazon or anything like that of that nature.
Self-pub wasn't even a thought back then.
Yeah, but there was a small company called CreateSpace that I figured out I could. Um, Eventually, I figured out I could publish this book, and so I guess that was my original. But it wasn't to sell to the broad public. It was just so I could get actual paperback copies to share with friends and family and that kind of thing.
Yep.
So I started back then, but everybody's like, "Oh, wow, you've been doing it forever." No, there was a big giant lag in there where I just didn't write a lot because I had tennis going on and other things.
Sure. Yeah, and there's this thing called family. There's like,
Yes,
I mean, I have
that's
two
right.
girls at 9 and 5. I got a house. I got a wife. I got life. So it's
Yes,
like, believe it
yeah,
or not, that does take up some time.
that's right. Yeah, I have two kids as well. I have a 4-year-old boy and a 6-year-old girl, and then
Okay.
I'm married, and we have a dog and a cat. So
Yeah, I
and
got a
two
dog and a
fish.
cat. Yep.
It's all that stuff. So yeah,
Yeah, I
it
used to
does
have a
take.
120-gallon freshwater fish tank, and that was quite literally a third child.
Yes,
That was
yes,
probably the dumbest thing I ever did when it comes to like that type of not like life-threatening responsibility, but of
yeah,
like,
right.
wow, that's a good idea. And then I'm like,
Yeah,
oh my God, I got to take like an hour out of my day every single day to maintain this thing.
yeah. We
It
started
was
with a
gorgeous.
beta. Yeah,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
and then it grew and grew. So
Yeah, no,
yes.
I went big. Like
Oh,
my father-in-law is a big fisherman. And
yeah,
so my wife grew up with fish in the house all the time when it came to that was just like a part of like they always had a bird, they had fish.
yeah,
And I had never had fish growing up, and I was, a dog family. And
yeah.
I'm like, yeah, let's get fish. So I bought a 40-gallon tank. I didn't buy like a cup. I went
Yeah,
40-gallon tank.
going big. Yep.
And then it went to like 60, and then it went to 120. And at one point, we had all three tanks running in the house.
Oh my gosh. Oh,
Because I'm like, well, I can't. I have different types of fish that will just beat each other up.
yeah,
You have to be very
yep.
careful. I like African cichlids, so they were
Mm,
gorgeous, but they're aggressive. But if we put them together, they're okay because they're all aggressive. They're all like that.
right.
And
That's
then I
right.
had and I'm like, this is getting out of hand. And then I got the baby
Yeah.
dragon. Then I got the bird. Then we
Oh
had
my
guinea
gosh.
pigs.
We're
And then I
we're
had kids.
slowly but surely, yeah, we're slowly but surely losing the fish. Yeah, they've been here for with us for a long time, and we're not
Yeah.
replacing them. Yeah,
Yeah.
when they go,
Yeah.
they go.
Yeah, and then I had the kids, and then it's down to one dog and a cat, and
Yep.
that's it. That's all I got time for.
That's enough.
That is enough. So it's funny you say. So I was actually I actually managed a pro shop in a bowling alley for 20 years or
Oh
20 years,
yeah.
12 years, 12 years. Sorry, I don't want to say 20, but 12 years. But I had done that for almost my entire adult life,
Yeah.
and then various injuries, back stuff, hand stuff, just kind of burned me out. I'm like, this sucks. I'm destroying my body for this. But I was
Yeah.
technically the house pro, and then ran that for about 12 years, and that's my background right out of high school. I was hired on to do that because I was pretty good, pretty young. And then so writing for me, didn't start until uh, about my late 20s. I'd say I was like
Yeah.
29. Yeah, so I'm
Okay.
38 now. So yeah, late 20s, I started putting together my first book.
Okay.
And for the sole fact that I told my wife I was like sick to death of like the mistakes that like movies were making with
Hmm.
like
Yeah.
certain scenes. And like, I'm like, oh, it'd be better from this camera angle or this or that. And she just got sick of it and said, why don't you just write a book?
Do
Why don't you
your
do,
own. Yeah.
yeah,
Well, you do it.
yeah, you do it. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay. So,
Right. Exactly. I think I will.
yeah, I think I will. And then, you realize what you're getting into and you're like, oh, all right. First
Should
few
have thought
books,
this through. Yeah.
stories were great. The books
Yeah.
themselves weren't.
Yeah.
Because
Well, we all
you
have
need,
that too.
yeah, you need time to hone the craft. I
That's right. Yeah.
completely get it.
Hmm.
So specifically your Ryan Bodine, your newer series that you're releasing right now, I see
Yeah.
Havana Nights and eventually Atlantis Rising.
Yeah.
Um, that is a spin-off of your other more, I guess, prominent series, which would be the Troy Bodine, right?
That's correct. Yes. Troy
Uh,
Bodine
yeah.
started the whole thing off. And as writers do, I created characters within that series that I felt like were very strong characters in their own right. And so I thought, I'll take this character and give them their own side story. I let them escape the Troy Bodine line and
Mhm.
eventually, have their own adventures.
Yeah, can you tell us a little bit about Troy? Because I like the
Yeah.
fact that you call them tropical thrillers, which I think is just
Yeah.
I love that idea. I have a couple of friends that are kind of in that similar I guess you'd say similar genre. It's the action adventure stuff, but they do really
Yeah.
focus on that island life.
Hmm. Yeah,
Um,
that's
yeah.
the goal. I read when I was kind of getting into thrillers, the very first thing I read was Jack Reacher. So it's this rambling sort of character,
Hmm.
but I've also had a love of the ocean and a love of the beach, and that, we go to the beach once every year at least, sometimes twice. And with with Troy, my thought was, okay, he's the rambler, but maybe he's not so polished as Jack Reacher. Jack Reacher can stare at you and stare you down, but Troy is a little more just laid back, unassuming. He's that island beach bum, and unfortunately, he's always kind of stumbling into some sort of crime thriller. Some sort of crime has happened, something's been stolen, or somebody's been killed, and he gets in the middle of it and somehow has to figure it out and save everybody. On top of that, when you sort of write that tropical or Florida fiction type book, it's supposed to be a little bit wacky. Florida
Yeah.
itself lends itself to that sort of wild and untamed and wacky and bizarre. So it
And I
rides the
don't know.
line.
I'm in Florida, and I don't know why we're like that, but we
It
are.
just happens.
We
It
are. I
happens
mean,
that way.
what is the
Yeah.
headline? Florida
Yeah.
man, blah
Does.
blah
Yeah.
blah blah blah. And I'm like, I've been here my whole life, and I'm not like, I'm like, what happened? Like, what is going?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's
And I,
completely true. It's completely true, but I just don't know where it comes from.
I I love it because when I see a headline like that, I think, oh, there's my inciting incident. Man gets eaten by alligator, and that appeared in one of my later books, and it literally was a Florida headline. So, life imitates art, or art imitates life. I don't know which one.
Little of both,
Yeah.
little of both, little of both. But
But
no,
that
that
Ryan was
yeah.
an opportunity for me to go off into an action adventure series that was a little less sort of Florida fictiony, a little
Mhm.
less sort of zany and bizarre. So he's kind of more straight laced, and it's more about like, okay, there's a cool artifact or something that he's after. There's some bad guys that are kind of Illuminati or shady and that kind of thing.
Mhm.
So it's a little bit more of a thriller and has some of those action adventure elements in it.
Cool, cool, very good. And
Hmm.
I mean, we're going to talk about this, but I got to say the covers are freaking gorgeous, man.
Thank you. I
The
appreciate
Ryan,
that.
I mean, they all are, but the Ryan Bodine covers, the new ones you did, are gorgeous.
Thank you very much.
I absolutely love them. I mean, tell us a little bit about that because we've spoken off camera about that because I do book covers
Yeah.
as well, and
Hmm.
we both had the exact same reasoning. We were like, it's kind of cool. I wonder if I can do it. I really don't want to
Yeah.
pay someone else. So
That
it's like,
That's it. Yeah. When I
and then
started, I mean,
yeah,
that's the way I approached it. I didn't, a cover is a fairly significant investment if you go to some
oh
professional.
yeah. Hmm.
And at that time, there really weren't a lot of people doing it. Stuart Bache was like kind of the sort of the big name that was doing sort of Mark Dawson, and he even had done some for
Hmm.
Stephen King. And so I literally kind of just followed that path, but I didn't have the money to hire him. And so I just
Sure.
kind of said, well, I know enough about Photoshop. I can kind of throw something together and I can look at the other books and make it look like that. And that's literally what I did. Well,
Hmm.
the impetus to actually start doing it more seriously and do it myself and for others was started by Mark Dawson and the Self Publishing Show. They had a thing called Book Lab. Their very first book lab, they invited me to come on, and they would look at the cover, the Amazon page, the blurb, and maybe the look inside. And they had an expert, and Stuart Bache was one of the experts.
Oh, wow.
And then they looked at my cover, and he was like, this is really not bad. Maybe you could do this and this, but this is actually pretty good. It's not too bad. And so I took that and started working on my cover and working on my cover, and I've redone it 5,000 times. Somebody sees my cover and they go, "Who did it?" And I say, "I did." "Oh, would you be willing to do mine?" And so on and so on. And then all of a sudden, it's sort of turned into a business. I said, well, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it right. I'm going to put up a website and make sure people know that I'm a professional, and here's what I ask for, as far as money and packages
Hmm.
and that kind of thing. So
Sure.
it really did. It turned into sort of another career.
No, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've seen the ones you've done for a mutual friend of ours, for Nick Thacker,
Hmm.
for his when he did a big republish and advertised blast for his Harvey Bennett series.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, these are fantastic. And then that's when he's like, yeah, my buddy Dave does it. I'm like, Behrens? He's like, yeah. I'm like, oh, okay.
Hmm.
Because
Yeah.
I knew the name, I knew you as far as like the writer,
Yeah.
but I wasn't aware, mostly because I don't look for cover artists, just because I
Yeah.
just do it myself. But
Right.
I was the same way. I am proud, but also kind of ashamed. I don't use Photoshop because I didn't want to pay for it, and
Yeah.
so I'm going to be getting into it shortly, just because I need to. It's one of those things I just need to get into, just because there's so much more depth to it. There's so much more.
Yeah.
Uh, I have zero background in this, so I'm like the worst when it comes to talking tech. But I
Right.
just know, like, the upload and everything is just better quality, and it's just nicer. But
Yeah.
I I just got into, I literally looked up free Photoshop programs and found GIMP, so GIMP or whatever
Yeah.
it's called, yeah,
Hmm.
GIMP,
Yeah.
GNU micro something image manipulation program,
Right.
GIMP,
That's right. Yep.
and I started using that just to get the hang of it and kind of figure out what am I doing. And for what I need,
Hmm.
it works, but
Yeah.
I'm outgrowing it as my ideas and I guess my ability is getting better.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll be digging in or diving in to the Photoshop world shortly. Hopefully it's not a massive change. Because that
There's a learning curve like anything else, but the amazing thing these days is the resources to learn it
Mhm.
are all on YouTube, and
Yep.
there are actually
Yep.
I don't know what's happening behind me there. No, there are lots of people who have courses that are very cheap and they're very professional. And the
Mhm.
idea there is you can just literally Google it and say, "How do I do this in Photoshop?" and you'll find all the resources you need.
Yeah, that's how I learned GIMP. I literally just
Yeah.
did I literally I didn't spend a dime on
Hmm.
teaching. I literally just YouTubed everything.
Yeah.
There's God knows how many tutorials out there for this stuff, and
For sure.
that's just that program.
Yeah.
Photoshop being the more predominant program, I'd imagine there's going to be even more. I've just never looked into it because I don't have it.
Yeah. There are
But
tons. There are lots of
oh yeah,
there's tons of information, and they can you literally could be like, well, how do I erase this corner of this thing, and you can put that in YouTube and you'll come up with 10,000 good
yeah,
videos on it.
no, that's awesome. So
Yeah.
I love to kind of dive in. This is probably like the deepest part of the show, but
Okay.
before we get into that, I did say I was going to do this off camera. If you guys are enjoying this show, please subscribe, like the podcast if you're listening on the audio version. If you are on YouTube, please subscribe. More subscribers we get, the longer we can continue to do this. I really do appreciate it. I really do enjoy this. This is fun because I love being able to bounce ideas back and forth off of different people within the industry. And I will be having not just authors on. I actually will have without disrespecting my good friend Dave, probably the best cover artist I know, period. And I really probably shouldn't reveal who it is until he's confirmed to come on, but we have not scheduled anything because of the distance from whence he lives from me. So time zones and how busy he is. So I'll clue you in off camera, Dave, but I wanted to kind of tease that. But I also have a really, really awesome treat in the next couple of shows I have scheduled is Matthew Crow, who is the voice of Jack Riley. So he is the guy that narrates my Jack Riley series. So I am going to be super pumped to talk to him because I know I'm just going to geek out when I hear his voice because I think he just does a bang up job in the series, and I need to pick his brain because I just need to. It's kind of that's the dork, that's the dork in me. I really, really need to talk to him specifically about my stuff, which is so it's going to be a big old show and podcast about me. So
nice. That's good.
Yeah, I know. But what I like is the influences. So what has driven you to like specifically like the genre that I believe that every author has like a specific genre that they're just like more comfortable in, which is key because there are some amazing amazingly versatile writers out there who can really like dive back and forth and jump back and forth between genres. The problem is the reader doesn't always do that. So a lot of the time you alienate your base when you want to go off on a little bit of a different path. And I've done it. I think we've all done it. And but obviously from what I can see that like action thriller, action adventure thriller is definitely something that you have an affinity for.
Yeah. I began my sort of my reading career began, like I said, with Jack Reacher, and that's because my stepdad would just hand me his book. You know, he'd be done with it, and he would say, "Here's the next one. Here's the next one." We kind of went through there, but then when I picked up a book on my own, the very first book I picked up was Tyrannosaur Canyon. That's a little bit of an older book. It's part of, you know, if you're familiar with Lincoln Child and Douglas Preston, they write quite a bit together. The first book in their big series was Relic, which was turned into the movie Reliquary, and so on. So that series, that whole thing,
Pendergast, the
Pendergast, that's right.
Agent Pendergast.
And those were the books where I just like, oh, this is really, I want the next one. Like right now, I want to read the next one. I want to read the next one. And when I began thinking that I could actually write stories, that's exactly where I went. You know, Matthew Riley and James Rollins. Those are the big ones. You know, James Rollins, when the Sigma books come out, I get it immediately. And it's funny that you were talking about your narrator because now I actually consume way more audiobooks. So I used to be, the hardback guy, and then I was the paperback guy, and then I was the Kindle guy. I still like my Kindle. But now I pretty much I'm Audible and, you know, the library app. So when it comes out, I just download it. And I think that's why I'm familiar and comfortable in that genre more than any others. I have other books in other genres, but they just don't seem to resonate like these do.
Yeah, and for me, it's more as the reader, not as the writer. The writer, it's obvious. I mean, my office is graham cracker brown because it's the color. It's the color of adventure. It's like it's the sands. It's the Middle East. It's Egypt.
Yes,
you know, it's very indie. It's very Uncharted, and that's
right.
That's the whole point. I'm a dork with this stuff, but for me, it's more of the pace. To be honest, the action adventure pacing is more. They don't necessarily have to be like balls to the walls nuts 24/7, but what I love about the action adventure genre is they just kind of keep going. They never really dip. And I mean, if they do, then, you know, I don't want to call out the author, but for me, they just shouldn't dip. And I think that's a lot of it too, is it's my attention span is garbage, but but it's also that I love what happened. I want to know what happens next, and I need and I like that feeling of being drawn into the story because it just doesn't stop. And the guy that the two guys that I really, really, really learned that from were Matthew Riley, which is where the name Jack Riley comes from. Matthew Riley, Jack West Jr.
I gotcha.
The Jack West Jr. series, the Scarecrow series, the Great Zoo of China. You can go through his portfolio, and that's one thing that he does is he goes nuts with the
Yeah.
action, but he
Yeah.
also does the world travel that I love, and he does the mythology and the lore. But the other guy would be Jeremy Robinson, and
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Jeremy, I did some ARC and like beta reading for him before I ever wrote my first book, and
Oh wow.
so I really got to see the inside of kind of like, I guess, more of the inside of his head,
Hmm.
um, to, I guess, have a mentor, to have somebody to learn from, which was great.
Yeah.
And his first time I read Pulse, the first book of his chess team series, the Jack Sigler series, I was floored because I'm like, wow, you really can mix like 4 different genres into one book
Yeah.
and
Exactly.
make it work. I'm like, wow, this is
Hmm.
great. And then before chess team, I actually discovered was Antarctos Rising, which is still probably one of my top 3 favorite titles he's ever penned. And that just introduced a whole nother world, a little more fantasy, but it introduced a ton of
Yeah.
like biblical history. And
Hmm.
again, action was nuts. So I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
But the one thing that he's great at, which is what I try to do, is I keep everything incredibly focused on the characters.
Hmm.
I want these readers to like fall in love with every little piece of backstory that this character has.
Yeah.
And that's also a part of the action adventure genre, I think, is the characters. It's
Yeah.
not so much like the monster in some of the
Hmm.
creature feature stuff, or the technology in the tech thrillers and like the sci-fi. It's the people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
don't.
When you
Yeah.
think of Raiders of the Lost Ark, you don't think necessarily about the ark.
No.
You're thinking about Indiana Jones.
Yep.
So it's
Yep.
that character that you all know and love, and you hope that he wins in the end, and that makes you want even more of that story.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I attribute that to like the Mummy '99. Like,
Hmm.
I mean, one of the best action adventure movies I've ever seen. But Brendan Fraser sold it.
Yeah.
It's like he owned the role. He is
Yeah.
Rick O'Connell, and it's like Harrison Ford is Indy. These
Yeah.
guys are just, they own the role, and it comes off on screen. And then of course the fan just attaches to the character.
Yeah.
So I mean, I absolutely loved it. It's like so as far as that's concerned. So like me, I'm very movie oriented. So
Hmm.
I grew up watching this stuff before I started writing this stuff, obviously, and so did you. But
Yeah.
were there like specific movies that like, or even video games, because I'm a fiend for like the Uncharted games and stuff.
Yeah.
So and Tomb Raider. But were there like movies that were just like that? Do they stick with you? And you're like, it's kind of like, man, like I owe everything to like Indie, and I owe everything
Yeah.
to like Uncharted. And it's like, is there anything like that in your life when it comes to as far as you as a writer?
Yes. So the Indiana Jones movies, of course. I was sort of, I'm 51, which I was born in the 70s, early 70s. And so I grew up when Star Wars was hitting, and when, of
Hmm.
course, Indiana Jones was hitting and all that. I mean, I literally, when Indiana Jones came out, I literally made a bullwhip out of rope, and I had my mom buy me a pistol. At that time, they looked real. You can't do
Yeah.
that anymore.
No.
But I had the hat, I had everything. I mean, we're talking about a 12, 13-year-old boy with this gear to be Indiana Jones. So
Sure.
much like you said, I mean, I wanted to be that guy.
Hmm.
And that, to me, those movies probably do as much for my writing as anything else does.
Yeah.
So it's definitely been a heavy influence.
Oh yeah.
As
Yeah.
far as like my favorite movie actually goes off genre a little bit. I like The Fifth Element. It's one of my
I
favorite
was
all-time
just,
movies,
yeah,
and
man,
it's
we need to hang out more.
it's just yeah, but it's one of those movies that you don't you're kind of expecting one thing, and you get something completely different, in the end,
Yeah.
and just visually, just
Yeah.
unbelievable. It's
If
just
there's
kind of one
ever
of
a
those things.
sci-fi movie that is truly an action adventure movie, it's The Fifth Element.
Yeah, for
It,
sure.
it has every piece that a
Hmm.
typical action adventure movie would have, but it
Yeah.
just happens to be, in outer space in the future
And
too. So
when you dig in, like you said, it's the characters.
yeah.
It's the two. It's Bruce Willis and Mila Jovovich.
Yep.
Their characters carry that movie,
Oh
and it
yeah.
doesn't matter that it's a weird sort of French sci-fi movie. It just still
Hmm.
sells as a great story.
Yeah,
So
Luc Besson, who directed and wrote that movie, is just he's just a mad genius.
yeah,
I actually talked to him for a little bit on Instagram, which was kind of cool. And then
that is cool.
his account, he deleted his account. Probably I don't know. I'm
I
not
don't
like a
know
friend, so I couldn't tell you. But
either. Right.
when Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets came out, and I read into it more. I knew it was a French comic book, but
Hmm.
I didn't understand why it was such a big deal to Luke.
Yeah.
And when I read the story about it and realized that that was actually what he pitched
Hmm.
instead of the Fifth Element,
Right.
25 years ago, and it was denied.
Yeah.
It was an idea they didn't want. So then he came up with his own like story, which ended up being the Fifth Element,
Right.
and then 20 years later, he was able to make Valerian, which I thought was phenomenal. I thought it was another one of those spectacles where I was just like,
Yeah.
wow,
Yeah. Visually,
visually
unbelievable.
it was gorgeous,
Hmm.
and I was like enthralled, and I still am. And who did I talk to? I talked to Rich, is RF Blackstone, and
Mm.
he's a movie nut like I am, and I said on Facebook I put together a top 5 greatest movies list
Yeah.
based on like my personal opinion, and Raiders was number 1 and Fifth Element was number 2.
Yeah. That's
And people
pretty.
are like fifth. I'm like, based on who I am, people are like Fifth Element, really? I'm
Yeah.
like,
What? What's that?
yeah, I'm like that was an easy number 2. Like that
Yeah.
was 3, 4, and 5 were difficult. 1 and 2
Yeah.
was like so easy to put together.
Yeah.
And 3 ended up being the Mummy 99, which that should have been an easier selection than it was, but it ended up
Still.
being that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just some of these movies, like I would love to write stuff like that, like with these space
Hmm.
operas. I just don't have the depth for it.
Yeah.
I just don't like. When I see like these fantasy novels and these sci-fi novels where people are creating their entire universe,
Yeah.
that seems so exhausting. It's
It's
like,
gotta be. Yeah.
God, I'm like
Yeah.
everything that you're created down to like their like mannerisms and like their
Yeah.
traditions and their speech
Right.
is
Their religions, their past, their history, their
everything.
ancestry. Yeah.
It's like I don't want
Yeah.
to do that.
That's a lot. That is a
that's
lot.
a that's a ton. That's a
Yeah.
ton. I can't imagine doing that, but
I know.
no, that's
Yeah.
awesome. So speaking of this, like when you decide to write the next Ryan Bodine thriller,
Uh-huh.
what does it look like? Like I'm very visual, so
Yeah.
I'm sure you are as an artist. So as a cover
Hmm.
guy, I see images and go, I want to write about this.
Yes.
And
Yep.
it's just as simple as the one thing I do is I see a picture of a gorgeous fjord in Norway and go, I want to write a book in Norway.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I can
That's
figure out what the heck I'm going to do in Norway.
right. And then you got to figure out why you're going to get there and how you're going to get there and all that.
And I
Yeah. No,
imagine you're the same way.
I do the same thing.
Yeah.
I know this is completely backwards, but these days, I read an article that maybe somebody posts on Facebook or somebody
Hmm.
like shows me from National Geographic or something of this sort of unexplained thing.
Yeah.
And then I look into it a little bit more and then I go, oh, that's kind of cool. And, everyone's done Atlantis that I know of.
Hmm.
However,
Yeah,
there
I
is a
have.
very cool there's a very cool thing that I had no idea about it. They of course people have different sites that they've thought of that might be
Mhm.
Atlantis or what was the inspiration for Atlantis. Well, there's a statue called the Christ of the Abyss, and there are about 4 or 6 of these around the globe underwater. And so what
Mhm.
you'll see if you Google it, Christ of the Abyss is a very Jesus figure doing this, looking up,
Okay.
and it's a huge statue underwater. They're all underwater. They're all basically the same exact statue, just in various points around the globe. Well, it occurred to me that there were 4 that I could draw, a crisscross on, and it just so happened that the point where they intersected landed on a potential Atlantis site. So that
Interesting.
just gave me all kinds of cool actual historical or actual scientific things to sort of throw into the novel. Now, when
Mhm.
it comes to Atlantis, you've got a little bit of material, but you don't have a lot. So you start Googling it and you start looking into it. And there are cults today that believe they are descendants of Atlanteans. And they're a little bit creepy. They're a little bit strange. So
I'd
you've
imagine.
totally alienated half the YouTube audience just there. But so you start, and just pieces come together and you start to Google something and you go, that's really cool. How does that work with this? And puzzles come together and you can blend in fiction when you need to. Because of what we do, we can go in and I often do in the back or in the front, say, here's the historical record. Here's what actually exists.
Mhm.
And here are the parts that I took liberty with. And it often just comes from just seeing a picture, like I said, of the Christ of the Abyss.
Yeah.
Um, and so I start looking into that, and I go, wait, there's more than one. Okay, where are they? So I get out a map and I put them on the map, and then I draw a crisscross and go, well, that's interesting. So one thing leads to another, and I go, okay, how are these all related? What does it mean? What's the big story? What's the, why does the bad guy want this? Why does the good guy want this? And so on.
Sure. Yeah.
And you and I had talked about this. I'm sort of a dedicated outliner
Hmm.
when it comes to writing. I used to just start and write into the dark, or write. I used to be a pantser, they call it.
Sure. Yeah.
And so I didn't know that that's what it's called. I didn't know what I was doing. I just
Oh
knew that
no,
I was going
my
to write.
viewers, the viewers watching this are very familiar with the word pantser by now. It's been
Yeah.
mentioned on every show.
Yeah. And I mean, and that's the way I started. I knew that I wanted to get from this point to that point, and
Sure.
I knew that I only had a limited amount of time to do it, 300 pages, 400 pages, whatever it might be. So I did it without an outline, and I would often get stuck. 2/3 of the way through the book, I'd be like, I have no idea where I'm going. I don't know what I'm doing. I have no idea how to get from A to B.
Yeah.
So I unfortunately said, you know what, I need to at least give myself a roadmap.
Hmm.
And so the next couple of books, I gave myself, like, here's what's going to happen in chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. And then I got to be where I like, well, I'm a dad, full-time worker, full-time husband, full-time parent. When I put it down, I've got to come back with knowing exactly what has already happened and what needs to happen. So my outlines are often now 10 to 15,000 words. And that might be overkill, but it allows me to come back to the draft and go, okay, I know exactly where I am. Even if I had to stop in the middle of a sentence,
Sure.
somebody gets out of bed, or, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's one of those things where when I come back, if I've got a very detailed roadmap, I can write faster. So I don't have to
Yeah.
go back, and go, okay, where am I? Where is Ryan right now? Where is Megan? I don't know where they are. I can't remember where I left them. But if I have
Yeah.
that detailed roadmap, that detailed outline, I can jump right back in, and I know where everybody's supposed to be.
Yeah. No, and I completely understand that. I completely get it. I probably when I first started writing, I didn't understand that that was like important.
Yeah.
And so I I don't outline as densely, but I won't tell you I don't outline at all. So
Yeah.
my thing is I always know what like the overall idea is going to be for the book.
Yeah.
Like whether it's a relic, whether it's a lost city, whether it's
Hmm.
who knows. Uh,
Yeah.
so then it's and obviously being very visual, I know location
Hmm.
or roundabout, but it's kind of one of those situations where like I'll do enough research to be confident knowing that there's enough of a story here.
Yeah.
I won't do enough research to the point to where I feel like I'm wasting time.
Yeah.
And that's just coming from somebody that just wants to write as many books as he can.
Hmm.
So it's probably more of me just wanting to get more stories out for my
Yeah.
readers and just for myself.
Hmm.
And it is something that I'm putting more time into writing. I always show people everything I do is on yellow ledger pads. So
Yeah.
it's like super old school. It's just short, handwritten notes.
Hmm.
I really don't like doing anything on computer when it comes to notes, mostly because I forget it's there.
Yeah.
I'm better with handwritten stuff. I remember it, or at least I remember that I wrote something that is like
Yeah.
semi
Ne-
useful.
Yeah.
And I'll outline 2, 3, 4 chapters ahead just to kind of give me a little bit of that roadmap. But
Hmm.
I kind of like the idea of letting the story develop on its own,
Yeah.
because I can tell you right now, I can't tell you how many books that I've had like an idea of where I was going and then said to hell with it, this is a better idea as I'm writing it.
Oh yeah.
And like I've done that with my current book that I'm now editing, which is the Undying Kingdom from Jack
Mm.
Riley. It's the fourth book in the series, and it's my journey with Shangri-La.
Okay.
And there are parts in that book that 4 or 5 weeks ago didn't exist in my head
Yeah.
until I was writing it, going, "Oh, that works.
Yeah.
Oh, that really works." And then you're like, "Oh,
Yeah.
okay." So yeah, I have to go back and fix a few things earlier in the book to kind of make mention of it, to kind of tease it. But
Right.
it's
Hmm.
like I'm not I'm not afraid to do that, probably just because I've done it so much. But it's like
Yeah.
I feel like if I this is just my personal feeling, because I mean, like you, like I know a lot of guys that do outline like heavily, and
Hmm.
they do great. So it's
Yeah.
there's no right or wrong way. I would
Right.
suggest outlining a little. So I mean, I've done it where I said, yeah, let's just write, and then I got halfway into the book going, where the hell am I going?
Yeah. Where
It's
is
like,
this headed?
yeah, where's
Yeah.
this head? This was a great idea, but now I'm a little shook because I don't know where this story is going. But
Exactly.
it's
Oh,
funny you bring up Atlantis like that, because that was the whole basis of my first series, which is now I don't write because I didn't plan it out accordingly, and I'm the first person to admit it.
yeah.
I got 4 books into that series, and I was like, I I don't really like where this is going, or I'm not
Yeah.
confident knowing where it's going,
Yeah.
and man, that was it got like really supernatural, got really like superhuman. It got
Oh
really
yeah.
like because it was supposed to be based on ancient Atlanteans who have inhuman powers and
Yeah.
whatever's and their tech and whatever. So I mean, it worked in the series, but it was like as I'm writing it, I'm going, man, I feel like I'm a little over my skis right now, and
Hmm.
and it's like so. I mean, yeah, like I outline. I'm definitely not a heavy outliner. I'm probably somewhere in the middle. I outline enough to get myself going, and then I
Yeah.
just keep outlining as I write the story, because I'll see something and go, oh, I wonder what that is, and then I'll Google something and go, okay, no, all
Hmm.
right. So
Yeah.
and that's just me coming up with stuff on the fly and then having to do a little research. It is a little bit of a slower process, but it's just how I've done it forever. And
Yeah.
but yeah, no, I mean,
Yeah, like I said, it's all based on how you get it done.
yeah,
Some people are really good at just sitting down and they can go with almost no idea. They maybe have a little germ of a story going and they can just go with it.
yeah,
And I have done pieces that I knew were shorter that way recently. I did an anthology, which was a sort of a um, charitable thing for Ukraine.
hmm,
They asked me if I wanted to be in it. I said yes. I don't have anything, but boom, I can bang this out. I didn't outline. I didn't do anything. I just said, okay, here's where I'm starting. Go, and it just came to me as I was going. So if you're practiced at it and you're good at it, you don't need much. But in my world, I need the skeleton to follow.
yeah, no, and more power to you. I mean, I just find like that much outlining and research exhausting.
I will
I
tell
get
you
to,
this though. I always, and this is, touching off what you said visually, I always find a stock image or a picture of a celebrity or a picture of somebody that I think looks like the character.
sure,
So if I, in my mind create a bad guy, I'll go get a picture of a bad guy.
yeah,
And so I have a document and it's got all their pictures. This is so and so. This is what Ryan looks like. This is what Megan looks like. And that way, it almost informs their character too. You know, Not long ago, I used Danny DeVito as one of the characters, and that just comes with a whole weight of informed character. You
yeah,
know what he sounds like. You know what he looks like. You know what he acts like. The whole bit. And I didn't have to
hmm,
do any kind of character sketch or profile of this guy at all. I just had it because I had the visual right there with me.
yeah. I mean, I saw an image of John Krasinski looking all badass in his military kit from one of his more recent movies. I think it was 13 Hours, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And he just looked like a badass, and I'm like, but
Yeah.
I know underneath that is still Jim.
Yep.
So
He'll
it's
always
like,
be Jim.
yeah. So, but I
Yeah.
love the idea of that, like melding of the minds, like
Yeah.
a guy that still has a juvenile sense of humor, but knows when to switch it off when he has to.
Yeah.
And that is like Jack Riley to a T.
Yeah.
He's just like John, but it's just I saw that and I'm like, man, the personality that that guy has, um, or the I guess just the depth of his acting skills. I'm like, man, this guy would be perfect as this character. And I'm like, I
Yeah.
could see that. I could see it in my head. And I'm like, got another guys like Chris Pratt, same thing.
Yeah.
He can be
Hmm.
James Reese, and then
Yeah.
he can also be Star Lord. So I
That's
mean,
right.
he's got that like perfect like balance of what he can. He's not like pigeonholed into the
Yeah.
like De Niro, Pacino, where you have an expectation of what character he's going to play.
Right.
So it's like
Yep.
even in like the Meet the Fockers and Meet the Family series, De Niro played kind of a very De Niro character, but
Yeah. Yeah.
he still has a little bit of that comic, in him. So it's like
Right.
he's a good enough actor. I mean, I'm not taking anything away from him, but he still has like that expected De Niro characteristic.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. When you see him, you know what he sounds like and you know what he's going
yeah,
to do. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, you expect a certain kind of gangster badass, just like De
Yeah.
Niro, like no nonsense. So I
Yeah.
mean, I get it. And that's when I saw John and just that specific image, I'm like, man, seeing him like that, I'm like, because I know what his like, I don't want to say his true personality. I don't know the guy, but
Well,
like
yeah.
I know like his more classic personality is a goofball.
Right.
And
Exactly.
he was great at it. And then he comes out
Yeah.
as an action star nowadays and he's great at it. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay. So I'm like,
Yeah.
maybe that's what I'm going for. Maybe that's what I'm shooting for. And like you said,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
the one image can drive an entire, in this case, an entire series because it just inspired the character. Did you have that with Troy and Ryan?
Yeah. Yeah. Funny story about Troy. There was no desire on the front end of my writing Troy and the series to write that series.
Okay.
We visit, my family visits Pawleys Island every year. It's in South Carolina, and it's the same house, same everything. My parents-in-law go, my sister-in-law and her family go. We go with our kids, so it's just a big house, and we all stay together on the beach
Hmm.
every year. So we're there one year, and a hurricane is coming, but it never got really close to us. But it just rained all week, so we were forced to sit inside and just interact with each other.
Yeah.
Hard to beat. But it
Yeah.
was a fun week, and we're sitting at a table where we can see out to the ocean, and see a guy in the middle of this pouring rain fishing. So this guy is basically probably 6'2". He's got sort of hair that's about ear length. He's got kind of a dark beard. He's got his blue Costa sunglasses on, and he has a cowboy hat, a straw cowboy hat, and he's just fishing every day. And so it became a little bit of a game for us to say, what is this? Who is this guy? What's he doing out there? Why would you be out there in the rain like this? We're like, well, that's what he's got to do. We don't have anything to do. So he became Troy. And it just became, we just said, well, his name, he looks like a Troy. This guy looks like Troy Bodine, and it had kind of a South
Mm-hmm.
Carolina look to it and
Yeah.
feel to it. And then we just kind of added to it. All of a sudden, the sun comes out. The rest of his family's there, and they match him exactly. They look like Troy Bodine's family, and they're a little bit on the country redneck side. And so he had a little bit of that flair to him. Well, we get back from the beach, and I'm like, I'm just going to write this down. I'm just going to write a little bit of this down. And I wrote like a chapter or two and gave it to my wife. She's like, this is hilarious. And I gave it to my mother-in-law, who was there and saw Troy. And she was like, you've got to write the rest of this. So 3 years later, I finished this Troy book, and I'm like, I'm gonna get it printed, I'm gonna package it, and I'm gonna get everybody that was there a copy of it. And that was my intent. There was no intent to write the rest of the series, no nothing. And that book exploded out of nowhere. I had no idea what self-publishing was. I had no idea about any of the things you do to make a book go. I had no idea about, and in fact, AMS ads at that time, I don't think even existed.
I
But
don't think they did.
I had no input on it whatsoever. But it just took off.
How long ago
And
was this?
2017 or 16, I
Okay.
think it was 2017.
All right.
So AMS ads may have been out. I can't remember, but I didn't know. I had no clue about any of it. And so, of course, I'm thinking, well, I guess I could write another one. I could maybe write a sequel. And I had years before that had an idea about a book. So I just shoehorned Troy into that book and wrote a second one really quickly, like 4 months, which for me was really quickly. So 4 months later, the next one comes out, and it skyrockets again. I'm just like, this is madness. I've come out of nowhere, and I started Googling, like all the self-publishing gurus and all the self-publishing, methods and all this. So that's about when I started to get into the actual sort of self-publishing sphere of people, all the
Sure.
Facebook groups and all the YouTube channels and things like that. And that's when I said, I think I can keep doing this. I think I can write another one and another one. And I got to where I really was writing them very quickly, and probably in the middle of the series suffers because I was just like, oh, it's got to be right now. I got to get this out now. And that first giant mountain of explosion has definitely tailed off. So I have no idea what I could do or could have done to keep it going,
Hmm.
but I probably missed it just being naive, not knowing what to do.
Sure.
Um, and I didn't have a lot of books in the series. I mean, I had to sort of try and write them really fast. And
Yeah,
so
yeah,
now I've, backed off
yeah.
of it a little bit.
Yeah, I was in that kind of I don't want to call it a trap, but it might be, where you're like, I don't want to be that author that writes a book every 2 years in my series.
Right.
And it's like, because momentum, this, whatever. See, the big dogs can do it because they
Yeah.
have tens of thousands of dollars in publisher, money behind them when it comes
Marketing
to
and yep.
advertising, yeah, marketing, all that stuff.
Hmm.
And it's like, and some of the big time authors only write a single book a year
Yeah.
or release a single book a year. And I'm like, that's not why I do that. That to me
Yeah.
is like, yes, are you a full-time author? Sure, that's all that you do for income, but no, you're not a full-time author.
Right. Yeah.
Like I don't want to do that. I want
Yeah.
to write, and it's like I want to write these books. I want to put them out. I want to, am
Yeah.
I publishing as fast as I used to? No. When I was self-pubbing, man, I was putting out 5, 6 books a year.
Yeah.
And it was like, granted, my books were shorter back then. My books have definitely gotten
Yeah.
large.
Same.
They've
Yeah.
gotten pretty big
Yeah.
the last couple years. And not by design. It's just,
Yeah.
I've talked about it on other shows. I think it's just the evolution in your work, in your writing.
Hmm.
But I don't want to do that. So it's like, but
Yeah.
it's also like, how much can you write to the point to where you're A, not exhausting yourself, but B, you're not
Yeah.
exhausting your options,
Hmm.
and that's the thing. Is it's like I that is the bad thing, I guess, in my case, the single bad thing about focusing specifically on one genre is you have to be careful what source material you're using, because you're like, okay, like I'm starting a new series with Nick Thacker called the Zara Kane Adventures. And they're the archaeological thrillers that him and I love writing. But
Yeah.
it's the exact same style of book as my Jack Riley series, just new cast, new adventures.
Yeah.
Those are also just a little bit, just that like little bit. Jack is PG-13
Hmm.
ish. Zara is
Yeah.
PG-13 with like 2 ishes.
Yeah.
There's that series is a little rougher on the edges,
Yeah.
but so is her character. So
Yeah.
they mirror each other. But it's
Yeah.
like I have to be careful that I'm not like crossing paths with like.
Yeah.
So it's like you can kind of step on your own feet, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's also, I guess, what my readers expect of me.
That's right. That's what they
So
love you for. That's what they
yeah,
want.
that's what they want.
That's it.
Exactly.
That's
Exactly.
it.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
I'd be interested to read that series. You
Yeah,
have to
yeah,
let
that
me know
was
when it comes out.
yeah, so Nick is finalizing edits on the it's technically the first 2 books of the series. I've mentioned this once or twice before with a few with on a couple other episodes, but I was I challenged myself writing that first draft
Yeah.
to because this is something that Nick and I wanted to produce together. Hit with all of the influence that he's giving me as far as locations, characters, a lot of the research on it. Um,
Hmm.
I told him, with you and I partnering together, 2 well-established authors in this specific genre, I want this to be a like massive unveiling. Like I want this to be like holy cow like
Yeah.
moment from the readers. That
Right.
was like my idea.
Hmm.
And I said, I am going to introduce Zara in an entirely ridiculous way. So I pictured a massive Indiana Jones opening where
Hmm.
it's just like nutty,
Yeah.
has nothing to do with the story, but it's just this introduction to the character. So you fall in love with Zara
Yeah.
without the adventure even starting. So I'm
That's
like,
that's like
okay,
the
it's, yeah,
the movie version of a prologue. That
yeah,
that whole thing with, it basically introduced Indiana. It introduced Belloc. It introduced the
yep,
whole idea that he's an archaeologist, and it had
yep.
nothing to do with the rest of it. Yeah.
And you never saw the golden fertility idol ever again.
Nope. Well, what did it show up in? It showed up in something. I forget. Those. It's always an Easter egg, but it's an Easter egg somewhere.
Yeah.
I'll look it up for you. But
Yeah, like, but it had nothing to do with the main actual
Nope.
storyline. It was Ark of the
Right.
Covenant and the Nazis. So it's
The
like,
prologue. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I wrote this 5-chapter prologue.
Yeah.
I literally wrote a 11,000 word prologue.
That's okay. That's
And
good.
Nick is like, "Dude, what are you doing?" I'm like, "It's really good." It's like, I am never, ever, 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 ever going to stop for the length of, or for the purpose of time. I'm
No.
never going to stop because it's gotten too long or it's gotten too big. I'm just going to write
Yeah.
it because that's what the scene is. That's what it
Yeah.
means.
Yeah.
And he's
Exactly.
just like, and he's like, dude, the word file is 130,000 words. He goes, we have to
Don't.
do,
Oh yeah.
and I'm like,
Don't let him talk you out of it. He's written some long stuff too.
yeah, no, but so what we decided was it would actually benefit to release the prologue uh, as a short story introduction
Yeah.
on its own, so we can use
Yeah.
that. So we pulled the prologue from the story, beefed it up more, made it longer, made it into like a novelette,
Yeah.
and we are going to release it as its own kind of short story. So basically, book zero of the
Yeah.
series. And it ended up being a really good idea because I understood from the marketing standpoint that, yeah, it's kind of like, I thought this book was about. It's called the Anubis Plague. I thought this book
Yeah.
was about ancient Egypt and a ancient plague, and instead it's drops Zara in the middle of the Amazon. So it's like, what?
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah, so I get it. I understand it. And I actually
Yeah.
liked the idea. I was actually like very, very happy with it. Like we were trying to figure it out. And I'm like, oh, let's just release it separately and give the readers a small little taste on who she is.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it's another book for the readers. So
That's
why
right.
not?
Yeah.
So I
Exactly.
mean, yeah, I totally get it. I get a little off the rails with certain scenes. Like certain scenes that should take a chapter, they sometimes take three. It's because I write in scenes, and when the scene's over, the
Yeah.
scene is
Yeah. Yeah.
over.
Yeah.
I just,
Exactly.
I split it up by chapters because I have to, not because I want to.
Right. Exactly. Got to
or
give
you
him
can
a
be,
bathroom break.
or you can be like Matthew Riley, and you don't even use chapters.
That's right. Just straight on through.
That's one thing that's so weird about his books in the best way possible is that he does, the bold header for each
Yeah.
chapter, but
Exactly.
there is no chapter numbers.
Not a break. Yeah. It's just a
Yeah, no, and
continuation.
and and yeah, I mean, when you think about it, it's like genius to do that because then it's just read. There's
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
no
I
stoppage.
used to
There's
love that
notes.
every now and then too. In his books, you'd come up to a diagram. It'd be like
Yeah,
you're in this temple in this whatever underground thing, and here's a diagram. Here's what it looks like. So you see
and
that a lot in those
when I first saw that in Seven Deadly
Seven
Wonders.
Wonders of the World or whatever it was called. Yeah.
Yeah, it's Seven Deadly Wonders. I was looking for the
Seven
book.
Deadly Wonders. That's
Yeah,
it.
when I first saw the map, I'm like, oh, this is going to be pretty involved, isn't it?
Yeah. Exactly.
I'm like, when the author gives you a map of the location
Yeah.
they're traveling to, oh boy.
Yeah.
So, but
It's gonna have some detail.
that just tells you how big he thinks. Like
Yeah. Exactly.
when
Yeah.
it's that big that you need a map, that's
Yeah.
insane. And I'm like, wow, that'd be kind
Hmm.
of cool. I'm like, I don't really want to do any kind of artwork. Like I have to hire somebody because I ain't doing it because I'm
Oh man.
terrible at that.
Go to Fiverr. There's 10,000 people that'll do it for you.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's what I've had other authors tell me they use that. So I mean, I get it. I understand. Um, so stuff outside of work, like obviously I
Hmm.
know you've been doing the tennis thing
Yeah.
pretty much your entire adult life.
Yeah.
Besides that, is there anything else like that you do just to kind of get away from the keyboard?
Yeah. I mean, I play a little bit of golf too. I'm definitely not what you would call a golfer. Um,
Yeah.
I play tennis. I play pickleball. I don't often play tennis for fun anymore. This is my 24th year of teaching tennis, so I just kind of it's become the job, and
Sure.
I don't really do it for fun much anymore. But it's a lot about the family things. I had a birthday not too long ago. My wife said, "What do you want to do?" I said, "I just want to let's just all go away for the weekend." And we went to near us in Tennessee. There's a place called Pigeon Forge,
Yep.
which is sort of the Dollywood, Dolly Parton capital of the world.
Yeah, I was
And
there
we
last.
went, yeah, so we stayed at a water park place called the Wilderness,
Yep.
and it didn't matter if it rains or shines because they've got an indoor park and the whole bit. And then right across the street, there's another park, and so we just had a good old time just doing water park stuff for the entire weekend. So that's it. That was a great thing for us just to be like away from the house and still just have a great time as a family. So it's a lot about that for me these days, just getting away
Yeah.
and doing something. And family days are a big part of that.
Yeah, that was my big thing for finally quitting my day job
Yeah.
is I was working 40 or 50 hours a week, working a lot of mid shifts. So kids are in school.
Mm,
So they went to school early in the morning. I wouldn't get home until God knows when.
yeah.
Um, Wife stressed out. I'm stressed out because she's stressed out. She's stressed out because I'm stressed out. Kids are just everywhere because we're not,
Yeah.
or me, like this is, of course, my awful thinking. I'm not involved. I'm not there enough.
Yeah.
And it was like one of those things where I'm like, I'm not doing this anymore.
Yeah.
The one thing that not the one thing, the million things that I've learned from my dad, but the one thing I've learned from my dad that I took away from him the most was he was a very successful businessman, did great in his life. But the one thing that he told me is he goes, I wish I would have gotten out of it 10 years earlier.
Yeah.
Because he got out of most of his ventures when I was in high school.
Mm,
And so he's just like, there's times where, and he was a very hands-on owner, so he would rather do it himself than pay someone else,
yeah.
and that was just his work ethic. But
Yeah.
I took that to heart because I mean the guy he did a lot of great, but the one thing that he didn't do well in his eyes was he wanted to be around us more, growing
Yeah.
up. And
Hmm.
I love my girls to death, especially at their ages right now. I'm like, I even if I'm here and I'm like working and I'm doing something and they're here, I'm here, I'm present,
Yeah. Hmm.
and that's big for me is just being present. And when I got the opportunity to do this and to to hop on with Nick and Conundrum Publishing,
Yeah.
and now I'm doing the show and I'm writing full time. It's been a blessing. It's been great. And yet I'm still jacking up my lower back, even though I'm not lifting anything heavy anymore. It's really annoying. Like I messed up my
it,
back last Sunday sitting in church.
it gets
Um,
worse, man.
I
It gets
I
much worse.
I'm literally watching the message in church and I lean weird and I feel like
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
already have a
Oh,
herniated.
what was
Yeah,
that?
I have a herniated disc like down above basically my
Oh
butt
gosh.
crack. It's like
Yeah.
way down. And it doesn't take
Mhm.
like I sneeze wrong and I'm down for a week. And that's actually how I
Uh,
herniated it. I actually
oh
herniated it
no.
sneezing.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
My little one was like, well, now my older one, my little when she was
Mm,
little, was doing the figure eight between your legs, and
hmm.
I was holding a hot cup of coffee and I sneezed,
Oh,
and to not spill it on her,
yes.
I locked my body up and felt my lower back blow out.
Oh no.
So yes, I
Mm.
threw out my lower back, blew out a disc, herniated the disc because of the sneeze.
Sneezing. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Well,
ever since then, it's just been jacked up. It's been gone. And now
oh,
I leaned wrong in church, felt the nerve kind of pinch, and I'm like, oh, that's gonna hurt.
yeah, I'm gonna pay for that later.
Yeah, and I didn't even do
Uh,
anything. I'm like, come on. It's like aggravating it while working. I get it. You're doing something.
yeah.
You're lifting. You're
Yeah.
doing whatever. But
Exactly.
and I was sitting. I was
Hmm.
sitting. That's why I live vicariously through my characters. I'm just
That's right.
I can't
Never
do
gets injured.
anything.
Never gets it. Well,
No,
see, so
he gets Jack
that's
gets the
right.
crap kicked out of him, but
I
it's
Troy has a bad knee, so that maybe that's part of me coming through him.
yeah, and there was always there. That's so it's funny. It's funny that that comes up. There's one thing I always try to tell people is so like we were talking about the character driven stories, and I want that's why I'm so enthralled with the terminal list right now
Oh yeah.
is the realness of James
Hmm.
Reese, the
Yeah.
realness of that dude, what he's going through mentally, the trauma that he's going through. It has nothing to do with armed services. The beginning episode, I don't want to ruin his life
Yeah.
getting absolutely obliterated. Like, but the realness of it, where you see him struggle mentally, you see him
Yeah.
struggle physically. He's bloodied, he's beat up. Like Indy, he was always got
Yeah.
something going on. And
Yep.
it's like I learned like that's super important. Like you can't
Hmm.
always have the Man of Steel as your
Right.
main character. Like something has to happen.
Yep.
And being able to humanize that character and really make him like normal
Yeah.
is super important. I mean, if there's anybody watching this that is like getting into writing or struggling in writing, like that is the one thing takeaway that I can give you is humanize your character to the point to where he is just
Yeah.
a guy. He's just a
Yep.
dude. Maybe
That's
he's
right.
better at something than someone else, but he can't be great at everything. He can't be the 90s
Right.
action hero. He can't be the Stallones and Schwarzeneggers that have no faults.
That's right.
and
Yeah,
that's
they have to be relatable. That's for sure. Yeah.
yeah, they do, especially
Yeah.
when like you're especially like so like in your case, Troy's just kind of like a guy. He's like the
He's
everyday
the guy.
guy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
like Jack has more specialty behind him because he was a Delta operator at one point, but retired because of massive bouts with PTSD,
Oh,
and
yeah.
just he lived as this demon in his own head. Like
Yeah.
first few books, he's like battling with that, with nightmares and depression, and like there's a lot of realism in his character because I want people to feel sorry for this guy and be
Yeah.
like, man, this guy struggled, but it's also
Yeah.
kind of
This
a
is tough.
story of redemption.
Hmm.
He
Yeah.
redeems
That's
himself.
Troy. Troy was in the military for like, one campaign or one service,
One
tour,
tour, yeah, one tour.
but he ruined his knee, so he was discharged. So he never became, a super soldier. He never became
Mhm.
the Captain America of his unit. And so he comes back and he has enough skills that if he happens to find himself in a place where he needs to use a gun, he can use the gun. But he's
Mhm.
not, he's certainly not James Bond or anything like that.
Yeah, yeah. Jack was in the military from the day he graduated high school, and
Okay.
was in Delta for over a decade. And
Yeah.
so he was very, very, very good at exterminating with extreme prejudice, and um, and he did so for the love of his country and for the love of freedom, that type of thing, like
Right.
the very cliched mantra. But
I like that.
after a horrible mission in Iraq in Mosul during um, I think it was Operation Freedom. It may have been. It was in 2016, but it's the
Okay.
only time I've actually dated the series at all. But it was just his origin, so I needed like a grounded
Yeah, exactly.
event, a grounded event, and
Hmm.
went after one of the Al Qaeda leaders, and the guy's using his 6 children as human shields,
Yeah.
and and very realistic scenario
Sure.
based
Yeah.
on everything. But
Yeah.
Jack witnesses one of them basically detonate a vest instead of
Mm.
follow his father, and it ruined Jack mentally. He retired. He was out. He was injured. He's just like, I'm done. And then that event just kept plaguing his mind as the years had gone by. And
Yeah.
it was kind of one of those things where it was like his grounding, his story, his background was as realistic as I could make it to where you were like heartbroken for this dude. And
Yeah.
then by the end of the first book, you were like cheering him on because he was like, you know, Jack's back. You know what I mean?
Yeah. He was
And
succeeding. Yeah. He's coming
yeah,
back.
and that was very purposeful because I wanted
Yeah.
to make him real. I wanted him to be a badass. I wanted
Yeah.
him to be an action hero, but at the same time, I wanted to show people that he's an emotional wreck.
Yeah.
And now he's just a goofball because he's kind of back to where he used to be. Like he's back into like, even he realizes that, wow, I haven't felt this way in a long time because I've been so
Yeah.
like in my own
Yeah.
head and depressed. And he's even realizing the healing that has happened as he's gotten kind of his life back together.
Yeah.
But so kind of come to the point of the show where I am going to remind people to subscribe and like it. So
Mhm.
yes, I'm getting better at the whole YouTube thing. But I also would love to have a book recommendation for you. So first, I want to know of yours if there's a
Yes.
book that you want somebody to check out that would like.
Mm.
This is a David Behrens novel.
Mhm.
What would you suggest?
The Troy Bodine series is linear, so that he is traveling through time, and just like the rest of us. But each book is a complete story, so you don't necessarily have to read them in order.
Okay.
I personally think the best one is Gator Wave,
Okay.
or not Gator Wave. Sorry, Gator Bite. So Gator Bite is the most current book. It's the latest one before the next one, which is in progress.
Hmm.
And it is, in my opinion, it's the one where I got most of it right. There are flaws in all of them. There are always going to be flaws,
Sure.
but this is the best one, I think. So Gator Bite is probably the best one, if you ask me.
Okay, cool. Very good.
Yeah.
Very good. And
Hmm.
what about a recommendation penned by one of your peers?
You know what? I just finished the Kosiga sequence,
Oh, okay.
which is actually sort of a box set of, and I apologize, I can't remember what the first title was, but they all say Kosiga, and it's by Brant Legg, and it is very archaeological action adventure. And like I said, I happened to see that he had a sale on his box set, and I grabbed it. and I read it. I mean, cover to cover on my Kindle without stopping. So I
Yeah.
highly recommend that.
I'm pulling it up right now. I got it.
Okay,
Yeah, Kosiga. Uh,
I think
yeah, the Kosiga sequence is the series. The first book would be Kosiga Search.
okay, there you
Um,
go.
so yeah, that's the
Yeah,
first book in the series. Cool, cool.
great pacing. It's got some archaeological thriller stuff to it. It's got it's kind of action adventure. It's got all the stuff, and it is one of those books that starts fast and keeps going. So if you like
Okay.
a good quick pace, it's great. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I'm actually reading some of the blurbs that he's picked up from people, and I mean, Indiana Jones meets Jason Bourne,
Yeah.
X Files
Hmm.
meets Da Vinci Code, on the way to Tom Clancy's house. So I mean, there's
It's good.
definitely
Hmm.
there's definitely some attraction even on my end that I might have to take a look at this. That's intriguing. Cool, cool. Yeah,
It's well done. Yeah.
anytime someone says archaeological thriller with fast-paced action, I'm like, "What?"
Yeah. Oh, I'll take that. I'll have
Yeah,
one. Yeah.
I'm so, like, buried in the best way possible in this genre that I'm like
Hmm.
I tell people, I'm like, "I'm so, this is it. This is what I love." And they're like,
Yeah.
"Wow." I'm like, "No, I limped into this decision a while ago because I went back and forth, and then
Yeah.
as years went by, I'm like, what am I doing? And like, I have all these great stories, or at least what I believe are great stories that I want to tell,
Yeah.
but they don't fit the genre. And I'm like, I don't care. I'm like, I'm not.
Mm.
I mean, I'll put it aside for another time. Maybe I'll
Yeah.
develop a pen. Maybe I'll develop a pen name. Who knows?
Mm.
I don't know. But yeah, for me, I would always suggest people pick up the Forgotten Fortune, the first book of the Jack Riley series. For me,
Oh yeah.
that's my baby. That's my bread and butter. Do look
Yeah.
out for the Empire Lost, which is going to be the short story introduction to Zara Kane,
Okay.
and Anubis Plague, which will be the actual first book of the series. Look out for those if you like what we've been talking about for the last hour, as far as these action adventure, fast-paced action books. For me
Yeah.
specifically, they always historically based, lots of archaeological kind of
Hmm.
treatment. But books from another author, I would actually suggest one of my past co-authors, which is David Wood and his Dane Maddox series.
Oh yeah. Yep.
So Dane and Bones, great series,
Hmm.
former Navy SEALs. Now they're professional treasure hunters who work out of the Keys down here in
Yep.
Florida. Wonderful series. I was fortunate enough to pen 4 titles with Dave.
Oh yeah.
One in the Dane Maddox expanded universe, and then 3 in the Bones Bone Break um, uh, side stories. So
Yeah.
really great, really rompy adventures, fast
Yeah.
paced, start to finish. Uh, can't say good enough things about Dave. He's been amazing for me and to me. Great opportunity that I was given to kind of hop on and do that. I do plan on writing more in the Bones Bone Break side stories. I just need to find time to do it. But my plan is to do that. I just need to find
Okay.
time to do that, and I feel bad
That's
because
right.
I have some ideas. But Dave, I wanted to say thank you so much for hopping on. This was awesome. Where can people find you online if they have more questions?
Yeah, my website is berensbooks.com. So Berens, Berens, books.com. Very simple to find. I'm on Amazon, of course. I am
Mhm.
exclusive to Amazon. So if you go to Amazon and type in David Behrens, you'll
Mhm.
pull up everything in my catalog. And if you
Yep.
want to check out more of the website. So
Cool, cool, cool. Awesome,
yeah.
awesome. And you can find this show on YouTube on the Conundrum Publishing page. Uh, just look for real life fiction, and you'll be able to find this show and subsequent episodes. You can also find me at mattjamesauthor.com. I do have tabs up at the top of my website with links to the YouTube site and links for the audio podcast. So if anybody has any questions there, you can always email me at down at the bottom. It's just matt@mattjamesauthor.com. I'm also all over social media when it comes to like Facebook and Instagram and all that stuff. So if you have any questions, I'm always available. I get back to people as quickly as humanly possible because I do value the interaction between me and my readers.
Yeah.
It's I'm lost without them. Obviously, we
Yeah.
all are. So please,
Absolutely.
please, please, like I said, subscribe. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. I love doing these shows. I love being able to talk to guys like Dave. And with that, Dave, I will say goodbye. Thank you for so much for coming on.
No,
And
no, thank you. It's great.
oh
It's
yeah,
good fun.
absolutely, yeah, definitely, definitely. And I will. I'll see you next time, bud.
Sounds good.